Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Hi. Can you hear me well?
I can.
Perfect. Thanks
Yeah.
for joining this call once again. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Where are you based?
I'm in Paris actually. You
Okay.
are in the
Nice.
US right now, right? For the Snowflake
Not
conference?
yet. No, in at the end of the week. So I'll be flying
Oh,
end of the week. Yeah.
where is it gonna be in the US? Is it San Francisco or New York this time?
It's San Francisco. I think it has always been in San Francisco, if I'm not wrong. The DBT one, they are they the DBT event they rotate around, right? So I think sometimes it's in Las Vegas, sometimes it's in the one we went to is San Diego, right? And then they went back to San Francisco, right? But for snowflakes only in San Francisco. Yeah. Have you
So
been to
many like
US by the way?
references. Yeah, I've been before. Like I did a 3 months internship in New York, but like 10 years ago
Okay.
already, 2015. Yeah,
Mm.
but I've never been like on the West Coast, so I still feel like this FOMO where I'm missing out on a lot of things, but I don't even
Mm.
know why. It's just this common thing that San Francisco is the place to be to build in tech. And actually, this is one of the questions I wanted to ask you today. I don't know how you want to like split this. To be honest, I just wanted like to discuss because I've been using a lot holistics. I put it in place in Lemlist 2 years ago, and I loved the product for a lot of reasons. But the main reason, to be honest, is the self service. I didn't have to intervene in a lot of steps for everyone to build the dashboard. And we didn't have, I would say, a lot of resources in our data team. So having like this very easy to use interface where everyone could like build a dashboard in like 2 or 3 seconds was I think really like the main thing that made me like love the product. And then because I left Lemnis and all, and I was like, okay, I'm super curious about the story behind it, and I'm trying to understand a little bit more about the stories behind the products I use and people who have built them, because I'm trying also to build my own thing
Okay.
now, either building my own thing or joining a very early team. That's why actually I left Lemlist, because Lemlist was growing. We were like more than 100 people when I left, and it's becoming like way too big for me. I like being in a small team and trying to go from the 0 to 1 usually. So that's why one of the reason I left. So so
Yeah.
yeah, trying
Well,
to get back to that.
they grow like crazy. They're doing a great job.
They did. Yeah, I mean it's crazy. Like the cold outreaching world is, and the sales world, sales tech is so big. It's such a big opportunity. And yeah, I mean there are so many questions I wanted to ask you, like because I saw both of us went to NUS. You went there like 5 years before me though, but or 3 years maybe before. I went in 2015 and left in 2017.
You went in
I think
2015 and you left in 20 what?
17. Yeah, it was a double
Okay.
degree, so it
Okay.
was just
Okay.
masters. Because I studied in France, but my engineering school had a double degree. But I was in the faculty of science. Yeah, it was faculty
Okay.
of science.
Mm.
S17, I think, or S16, something
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember and have good
I do.
memories
I
of
do.
NUS.
I see. I see. Oh, is it near the football field?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
opposite the football field. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But how was like your experience actually at NUS? Because from my understanding, you started in a lot of like places. You started in Vietnam, but then you decided to go to Sweden in KTH, and then came back to Asia, went to Singapore, and in NUS, right? But like, why did you go to
No,
Sweden?
no,
From my
I
understanding on your LinkedIn, you wanted like
not really.
international.
So I went to NUS for university, right? But NUS has this program where um I think back in 20 oh 07 oh 08 around that at that time. So okay, so one of the thing about Singapore is basically it's a very safe country, and people usually follow traditionally a very corporate mindset. So back in
Mhm.
the early 2000s, right, when this whole entrepreneurship spirit kind of started, Singapore government wanted to encourage its citizens to to do more startups, right? To do more tech startups, basically kind of learning, imitating the Silicon Valley model. right? So the university itself, they started the program to send new students to do entrepreneurship exposure, right? So then they will send people to different entrepreneurial hubs around the world, be it in San Francisco, be it in Philadelphia, in Israel, in Europe, right? And work at some local startup company. So that's what I applied, right? I applied and I got into a slot where I got sent to Sweden, right, to Stockholm, and then I
Got
worked
it.
for
Okay.
like a startup there, right, for a year, right, and then during that time, you also take courses from, in this case, from KTH, yeah.
Got it. Okay. Now
But
I
but
understand
just
the
just a
journey.
year, right? And then so it's like it's still in US, but you take a year off and then you went to work for some startup in some remote
Got it.
country. Yeah.
That's a great way, actually, a great way of learning, definitely about new cultures, new ways of doing. And it was late 2000, right? So the starting of
2009. Yeah, 2009 or
2009,
something
yeah.
like this.
So
Yeah.
so there was like this new trend in Stockholm, with Spotify, maybe also other
Correct.
tech
Right.
companies starting back then. Did you like
Yeah.
hear about Spotify in 2009, or it was
So fortunately, I
too
didn't get to
small?
work
Yeah.
in Spotify. Yeah. I think the guy I went to, so one of the guy that went alongside with me, I think he can't remember, but some of them work in Spotify, right? But I didn't get
Okay,
to work in
nice.
Spotify. Yeah.
So it was okay. So it was already growing back then. But was there like a common tech hub in Stockholm already in the late 2000s? Because now there is this big trend about Stockholm with Lovable and Klarna and Spotify, and I mean there is this big tech community now growing in Stockholm. But was it already there in the late
It
2000s
was it was
from
it,
your
it
knowledge?
was somewhat there, right? I mean, it was somewhat there, but I guess it's mostly kind of a bit of a tech, a bit of IT, and also a bit of biotech, and all these different
Got it.
clean
Yeah.
energy tech stuff, right? But
Mm.
I think I don't know, but I think right now definitely is a lot more vibrant.
Me,
Then it's
from,
probably
mm,
London, Stockholm, probably Berlin and Paris,
yeah.
right? I'm sure it's still the
Yeah,
same. Yeah.
it's still the same in Europe. Yeah, those are like still the hubs, and they will always be because I feel like these cities, the weather is so bad that the only thing you can do is work anyway. So, so that's why I think these are like startup hubs.
No, no, no.
But
I love Paris, man. I mean, I went there 2 years ago and I love it.
come back, man. And when you come back, you let me know. But for me, like the startup, I would say trend in Singapore and NUS, it wasn't even there yet when I was in 2015, 2016. I remember they started like building a new faculty of not really entrepreneurship, but like there was this new course. But I remember like it took a lot of time, before really democratizing the thing because as you said, culturally speaking, it was better seen to go to a big corporate job. I don't know, go to HSBC, DBS, or these big banks, or going to Singtel. These were like the best, or going to Singapore Airlines. Those were like the common corporate jobs everyone wanted to have. And then there was
Mm,
this shift. I feel like I was there maybe too early. I think it started after I left after 2017. But you said it started actually even earlier, right? Late 2000. So this program
yeah.
you actually joined, it was, wow, okay. Because I don't remember actually seeing this program. But then I was in Faculty of Science and I was
Mm.
in a double degree. But yeah, honestly, it's a great program. I wonder like if there are others like you who took the leap afterwards, to start something. Because after you came back to Singapore, you already like had this entrepreneurial mindset, or you first went to build things for others and work for someone else and for another company. How did it go
I
like
mean,
for you? I would say this journey of
I mean, for
entrepreneurship so
I
far.
mean, for me, it's I mean, I wouldn't say like a entrepreneurship thingy, but it's more like I like to build stuff. I like to build stuff for people, right? And then so um, so when after I graduated, I kind of took a job as a data engineer, as a kind of a tech startup, and then we build a bunch of stuff within the company, right?
How big
And
was the startup back then?
the company was like 50 and growing to like 200 plus people. So
Oh, okay.
it was kind of a VC backed startup, and actually it was backed by even Anderson Horowitz. um yeah, but it was based in Singapore. It's a kind of a US startup, but it was but then the founders moved the team to Singapore for the engineering, product and engineering team in Singapore. So I joined that team, right?
Okay.
And then so we were building a bunch of different data tools internally. We have a small data team of like 5, 6, 7 people, from analysts to data engineering and stuff, right? And then this is back when there wasn't Redshift, there wasn't Databricks, there wasn't
Yeah.
Snowflake,
No
right? So
Snowflake,
yeah,
no
so
data
the first
warehousing.
so the first warehouse that came out was actually Redshift. Um, so what happened is we were actually running our data warehouse off dedicated Postgres instances, like and then we do all sort of optimizations to make it run faster, right? You do all this kind of fine tuning, and you actually have to go into read the documentations and turn off and on a bunch of stuff, like, to make the query run faster, right? And you do
Get
a
it.
whole lot of different aggregation, right? So after a year, then Amazon Redshift came out. That's when we started experimenting with Redshift, right? And then
Mm.
after that, then you have like kind of Amazon EMR and Presto and all that stuff. But that came out way later, right? So my point is, we build a bunch of stuff there, and we build a dashboarding tool there. We build some sort of like something like DBT there.
Oh,
We
so you
build a
built everything yourself. Everything was in
Correct. I mean,
house
me
before
and
you
a
even
bunch of
start. Yeah.
a different colleagues, like three of us, build a bunch of stuff. Like we have an A/B testing tool there. I mean, it's similar to like a typical data engineering team in fast growing startups that you hear nowadays. They kind of customize and integrate a bunch of different tools internally. But yeah, so then I think one of the thing is there was the dashboarding tool, right? Then after a while, I feel like, hey, this dashboarding tool can actually be spun off. That's where I went to the management and I say, hey, this thing looks cool. Can I actually take this out, spin it off, and build a startup around it? And then they say yes. So we work out
Okay,
some
so
sort of
that's
transition, right? They support me, like they allow me to take the thing off, uh, and then kind of spin up to new startups. So the
and this
com
was in
this
Singapore. This was
this
still in
was in
Singapore, right?
Singapore. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and actually, by that time, the company was already acquired by uh,
Rakuten, is it?
Rakuten. Yes, Rakuten, right. So the I would say the management, so the CEO, the CTO, CFO, was also a bit more relaxed about it. But they have always been very supportive, right? They were super supportive for the whole thing. Like they wanted to support young entrepreneurs to do the whole thing, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Mm.
So with their
And they
support,
give
I kind
you
of exactly. So it took me a while, and then slowly I find friends that can join me to start the thing together. So then three of us we kind of start together. So we didn't actually start it immediately, quit the job and go full time. We were just kind of working on it, in our evenings, and then we started looking for our first customers, right? And then we found our first customers, which is Grab, which is kind of the Uber, but for Southeast Asia. I'm sure you know. Yeah, and then
when
once
was that?
that was late 2015. Yeah.
Okay, so Grab wasn't the Grab of today yet. It was
Yeah,
still
yeah. It was
small
like
English company.
100 people plus. They still that back then it was already 100 plus people company, but they still based in Malaysia. They will call themselves Grab Taxi. They haven't moved their HQ to Singapore yet. Uh,
And,
you know,
and why did you start with Grab actually? Like
well,
what
we
was
just
like your
we
go-to-market
just
strategy?
I mean, it's I was a 20 something, engineer, software guy, right? With no sales, no marketing, no business background. So, I don't think about go to market strategy and whatnot, right? That was kind of the big learning point of after all these years, right? So, um, it was just, through connections, right? So basically, Grab back then they were also building up a data team, and then building up some data infrastructure. So we got connected. I speak to them, and then they were asking our help to with their initially. I think they wanted to hire us to go work with them. But then I told them, hey, we're already working on this thing, right? So we wanted to work on our own company. So they say sure. And then but I say, hey, why don't we just maybe I do a bit of consulting for you to help you figure out how to structure. I mean, think of this as a very small startup, right? It's fast
Yeah,
growing
yeah,
startup.
of course.
Yeah. So then you say sure. So then I came down there. I do a bunch of help them architecturing, and then at the end I say, hey, okay, for this part, I think you probably can use our tool, our BI tool, right?
And you
Then
had
they just
already
say,
like the product, the full functioning product already. Like
it
Holistics
was
was.
it was always evolving, right? So back then it wasn't even a self-service tool, not the one that you use recently. Back then it was like redash, if you know what I mean, like a query, a SQL base. You write the SQL and then you select a visualization and it visualize the chart for you, and you inject some filters and
Okay.
some filter parameters variables into the SQL query, right? And then the filter variable interpolate with the query, and then stuff like that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So they were like, okay, sure, I think that makes sense. And they come up with a bunch of different requirements around the security and access control, because they actually have a
Mhm.
very complex access control requirement. And things like, hey, I have 6 market in Southeast Asia, and then I also have different like Grab car, Grab buy, Grab food, and all that thing. I want the business manager for each of these vertical not have access to the other vertical, that kind of stuff, right? It was pretty
Mm.
quite complex, right? Because say I want a Grab food manager to have access to only Grab food data, but I want the Vietnam country manager to have access to only Vietnam data, right? But I want the
Okay, so
Vietnam
you had
Grab
to
food.
customize. Yeah, so
Exactly.
you really
This
had to
kind
be
of
careful and add these layers.
matrix. This is like a 6x6 kind of access control matrix. So we actually have to, in the end, we had to build something very custom, like a custom access control language for them to specify the permission for themselves, right? So that's when they sign up, right? They sign up for our first customers, and then when they sign up, we kind of, hey, okay, this thing seems to make sense, and then let's go full time. So we, three of us, we slowly started to roll out full time. Yeah,
I like actually this type of stories because there isn't like I would say one size fits all. Sometimes people that just go full time straight away
yeah,
without even a product. Here you actually did it. I would say that in some kind of like linear way before even
mm,
having like your first customer. You didn't like leave I would say your full time job yet. But once you have actually validated the product market fit in a certain way,
yeah.
then you just went full in from my understanding. But then uh, if I understand, then Grab was only your first client, and then how did you like move to more clients because you were
We just,
self-funded,
I
right?
think we
Or did
just
you raise
we
funds afterwards?
we didn't raise any fund, right? So
Okay, so
we
you bootstrapped it.
yeah, I mean, so far we haven't raised any funding.
That's
Which I'm
amazing,
not
man.
sure if I'm not sure it's a good or a bad thing, right? So it is what it is. Um, so, but let me think. We just kind of knock down or to down, right? And then we just kind of sign up whatever customer that comes our way. So in the early years, we do a lot of customization for individual customers. Whatever customer comes our way, and we did a lot of customization for Grab as well, right? Because imagine that's like your enterprise customers. Like at some point they were like maybe 50, 60%, 70% of your revenue.
So you were
Then
like the three of you really focused on making like this one work before even expanding to other companies or having like other Grab like big
yeah,
corporations or I would say growing
yeah,
companies into your revenue
yeah.
model. Got it. Yeah, and how did you like tackle this? Like, how did you scale uh, by bootstrapping? I would say in such a very difficult market because you're also competing. I would say with less customizable product, and that's why actually I didn't use it at Lemlist. Any of Tableau or Power BI or
Mm.
Looker. Okay, maybe Looker and Looker Studio were not really available even in 2015 yet. But how did you like, yeah, grow in this
So
market
we
by
were we were
bootstrapping? I feel
basically
like it's such an amazing
oh we
thing you have made there.
I think we did struggle a lot. To be fair, I think we were competing with Redash. We were competing with Metabase.
Metabase
We were
also, yeah, of course. And they were
competing with
funded, I think. Mm.
Superset. So kind of in the early years, these trees are the our competitors, right? So Redash, Metabase, Superset, and then Chat.io, if you remember them.
Yeah, I remember this, but it was more of a like Python library, no? I
No,
didn't
it's
like start.
it Chat.io, right? So I think the Python library you're talking about is probably Plotly.
I think it was Plotly. Yeah, I remember this one.
Yeah,
I did.
yeah. So 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 basically, the heuristic you are using, we went through sort of four different version or iteration, or like you can say mini pivots, right? So
Mhm.
it started out by the first version, which is like the SQL to chat, which is like a redash, right? And then after a while, our customer grab, they actually, this is actually when dbt wasn't very popular yet, right? So then they were asking for stuff like, hey, can I so our customer grab, they were asking for stuff like, hey, can I do transformation, right? Can I do materialization, right? So it's something that dbt does nowadays. um and then, hey, can I have this data in can you pull data from my production database over to my warehouse, right? So etl stuff, right? And for some reason, we actually started to build these things out for them, uh, because they were like enterprise customers, and we do everything for our enterprise customers, right? So after a while, right, it's not just a BI tool, but it becomes sort of like a BI tool and a transformation tool and an ETL tool, right? So we sort of like reposition ourselves to call it like end to end, a full stack data tool, right? And then so then that works out a little bit, because there are some companies, they were like, okay, I want something that has a whole bunch of different things, so it's easy for me to, I don't want to buy multiple tools. But then so that's on one hand, but on the other hand, you also face these companies where they say, hey, I already use Fivetran, or I already use back then was something called Stitch Data, right? Like an ETL tool.
Mhm.
I already use some sort of transformation tool, like some sort of old school transformation tool. If I buy you, then basically I'm not utilizing this transformation and this data import very well, right? So then you see this dilemma here. So, and then at the same time, um, we also spread our resources, because we have to, if they ask for a new connector, we have to support the connector, right? If they ask for, so we cannot focus our resources on just the BI thing, but we'd have to we don't have a lot of people, because it's a small team with no funding, right? So that was version 2, right? And then we decided, hey, let's just, so number one, let's sort of slowly move away from the ETL piece and the transformation piece, and just focus on the BI piece, right? So then we just offload the ETL and the transformation to other tools like Dataform, like dbt, like Stitch Data, right? And then the second thing we decided was, hey, it's not very self-service, right? The analyst will still need to write the SQL query, and whatever new additional columns that the end user want, the analyst will still have to modify the SQL query to update the report. So that's not ideal. Um, and so we decided, hey, let's make it self-service, right? So we actually have to go ahead and build the entire. So we build the entire modeling layer. Back then we call it, and now people call it semantic layer. It was but for the longest time, people are still calling it modeling layer. Uh, so we actually build our modeling layer. This is actually what I think this is what Lemlist you guys are using, right?
I
Because
had
you go,
actually I started with I think it was the 3.0, right?
yeah,
Version. Yeah, we
correct.
started with 3.0, but then I moved to the 4.0. So I had both. I had the
Okay,
modeling, and then we moved to the semantic before Adivia. So I tried
okay.
both
Yeah.
models.
So the one you use is our version 3, right?
Mm,
Which is what I just talked about. Basically, it's something with the modeling layer. You define a models
mm.
data set, and then you expose it to the end user for them to self-serve and build their own dashboard. So that was pretty good.
What did you come
Um,
up like with this level of abstraction layer? Because I'm just trying to get the journey back. So there was the 2015. You started with
Mm-hmm.
Grab and building, I would say, for them and helping them more on the BI tool. And then when did you come up? I would say with this mini pivot of really taking care of the abstraction layer that is actually
It was
serving
just
the data
natural,
analytics.
right? It was. I mean, it's a very natural thing because as you build and then as you hear requests from the customers and as you dig into it, um, uh, it has you have to build some sort of mapping layer to store the business logic and figure out how to translate the business logic into the specific SQL formula, right? So it was very natural, right? You don't have to follow any kind of playbook and whatnot, right? So by the time you figure
Right.
that out, then you say, okay, this has to be some sort of layer, intermediary layer to store the business logic, and then we just call it. Hey, it seems like people are calling this the modeling layer. So say, okay, let's call it the modeling layer. Yeah,
Yeah, so it
uh,
was definitely the intuitive way or logical way to move forward.
correct.
But
To,
that's
to move.
amazing. I mean, going, yeah, started like really with Grab,
Yeah,
and then how did you expand like to other customers? Was it, I would say, people talking about you? Did you like have another
I
strategy in
mean,
mind? Because you said, software engineer by training, so you didn't really
yeah.
have this marketing or go to market mindset. So how did you like
I mean,
switch to this mindset as of like or
we just
learning?
do on the job. I mean, I think we've been at it for quite a while. So we just and no, three of us, none of us, like the marketing background, like one sales guy and then two engineers guy. So then we end up all having to learn some marketing, and we do a bit of SEO, word of mouth, with outbound content. I mean, I think so far SEO works best for us. Yeah.
On
uh,
which keyword? Just out of curiosity, because
I
from
mean,
my experience, the first thing.
if you search for, I mean, for nowadays, if you search for, if you went online search for self-service BI tools, or if you search for embedded BI tools, you see holistic rank at the top, say 3 to 5 keyword. I mean, some keyword
Okay,
we rank.
so you really
Yeah.
like focused on this self-serve and didn't like really go into, I would say, Power BI or Tableau Tableau's strength, I mean, their strength are not really on the self-serve. It's more on the this very big platform that is usable and where you can do pretty much everything. But because you can do everything, you need like a PhD person to actually handle it, right? Where on holistics, I feel like if you put everything in place, you have the real foundations, solid foundations, then the self-service becomes very easy to use among the teams. And now, do
So
you have like a strategy of keeping, I would say, focused on big enterprises, or are you moving to more SMEs? Because I feel like, for us at Lemlist, it was perfect because we only had, it was only me actually on the data on the analytics side of things. But like, how do you feel like holistics is being used among bigger analytics teams? Because, the self-serving is really important when you have limited resources.
mm, so I mean, I think you've used the 4.0 version already, so you have some experience with it. So you would know this because right now the two key selling points. So holistic right now have two key selling points. The first selling point is the self-service for the business users, right? The second selling point is the governance for the data teams.
Mm.
Mm. So like why governance, right? Because so how okay, I think why is easy, right? Because as you grow, as the data team grow and outgrow, you have all these different definition of different metrics, and sprawl across different report, right? And to manage that is a nightmare for the data team, right? I think we spoke to a lot of data team that say, hey, it's very difficult to have a central, consistent, and very trustable kind of BI system where the business user feel like whatever report come up, they can trust the numbers, right? So
Mm.
so that's
Yeah, that's true
that's a
actually.
common, yeah, that's a common pain point. How do you solve that, right? I think we solved that pretty nicely, because obviously number one is you have a semantic layer, you have a modeling layer, right? Because then you can centralize all the definitions. Number two is you have and this is this is actually one of our key differentiator, right? Everything in holistic is now defined as code. Uh, so you can write it in some sort of DSL in holistic, right? And then you can version control it. You can do code review with it. You can do pull requests around it, right? So every change is kind of version control, and that
Mm.
actually one of the very big selling point of holistics when people came to us. They're like, okay, we're looking for some BI tool with proper version control of the logic, both from the metrics to the models to the dashboard,
Mm. Yeah, indeed.
right?
When you I mean, when you leave like the self-service in the team, I mean, a lot of things can happen and a lot of mistakes, and you don't want them like to impact the business. So having like this version control that helps, roll back if there is any issue is super important. And I thought like, I mean, for me, it was alone, so I didn't use it much, but I can pretty much guess that in bigger teams, it's very important to have that feature in it.
Yeah. So the thing is, you wouldn't use this much when you don't need it, but when you need it, then you wish you had
Yeah.
something like that. It's like when you do programming with, and then you check it into Git. Most of the time, you actually don't look back and view what did you commit to 3 months ago.
That
You
when
don't
there
do
is a
a Git
problem,
play.
you go and check back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When there's a problem, you want to know who made this change, when did we release this change to production, stuff like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And
it's like a security guy, right? When there's no problem, you don't actually notice the security guy.
mm,
Mm.
yeah, of course, that only when a problem happens that you notice this person, right? That is actually very valuable. But thanks, man, for sharing all these learnings along the way. Because building, I feel like in the data space has been in the past at least 10 years, kind of like a closed system. There have been a lot of products they made it out and all, but there is still I feel like a little bit of mystery on how to build in the data space. It's not like selling for I mean a marketing tool or a sales tool. I feel like in the data space you have not only like very strong competition with well-funded teams, but like going also bootstrap. You really need like to focus on the main pain points. And for you, I would say the strength, from my understanding, was really finding the pain point first in your company, and then manage to kind of generalize it and find the first company like Grab that helped you shape the product and move it forward and really like modernize it and generalize it to even more and more customers. So that's super inspiring. And my last question is gonna be, how did I? Because right now you are in Vietnam, is it?
Mhm.
Like, when did you actually move to Vietnam, and what was there like any reason behind that?
Oh,
Do you
when we
feel like
started,
it was for the business or for the engineering?
no.
What was
So
like the
my
reason?
so so three of us were based in Singapore.
Mm,
But actually, so I'm Vietnamese. So the founders, we have one Singaporean person, and then we have two Vietnamese. So the Singaporean person is the CEO. He handles sales and business. And then the two Vietnamese are me and the other co-founder, and we handle product and engineering and a bit of marketing. So when we started, I have some family stuff that I actually have to move back. But then when I moved
yeah,
back, I felt like, hey, I might as well just stay here because yeah, it's my home country, right? So and then obviously the decision to build up the engineering and product team here is also makes a lot of sense. Because it's easier to find decent engineers here, and it's also more affordable for us when we
yeah,
have a lot.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, and that's like a
Yeah.
super good strategy that paid out at the end. Because I feel like I have
Mm,
a lot of obviously either Vietnamese or at least Vietnamese born friends, and a lot of them actually I know
mm,
at least two or three that are moving back right now to Vietnam and
mm.
are part of
Why?
the movement of, because I feel like they have kind of they don't want to like miss this trend where Vietnam is
Mm,
really growing and there are a lot of opportunities. And from my understanding, they don't want to miss like these opportunities. This is the first reason. And the second, I think, from what I heard, is also connecting back with the country, because
mm.
a lot of them went to Canada or the US in the 70s, and now we're trying to reconnect back and find, I would say, this connection and family that they try to reconnect at
Yeah.
least with the family. So I think your
Yeah.
decision was maybe early back then, but now I feel like it's becoming more and more trendy among at least my peers and people I know. So actually, at the end, it's a really great one, because I feel like might become also a good tech hub. I don't know if you are in Ho Chi Minh or in Hanoi, or
Ho Chi Minh.
maybe Ho Chi Minh. Okay, I feel like Ho Chi
Mm.
Minh is really growing into the tech space, trying to really like bring back, I would say, the knowledge to the country, and also build the knowledge inside the countries. I think you're in the right place to build. So what's next for you and for holistics now, apart from
I
the
mean, just,
conference?
just continue. I mean, I think we have a lot of we have so uh, doubling down on the self service experience for the business
Mhm.
users. Because I think what you used back then was good, uh, but it can be a lot better, right? If you check out our new thing, and if you look at what we released since maybe the last 3 4 months around the business user experience, it is even more awesome, right?
Okay.
So far.
Obviously there were obviously a little bit of gaps. I mean, it's not perfect, it can never be perfect. I remember, I would say,
Mm,
my biggest trouble was with the user interface. Then you released Canva at some point,
mm,
so the other dashboards became legacy. But when
mm,
I left, I felt like you were also taking care more and more about the UI, because it's always a big trouble in
yeah,
the UI, trying to have as much flexibility as possible.
yeah,
Like even the color, I remember the color was so hard because you had to attribute one color per attribute, so it was kind of name conventional. It was super hard, to try to get the color grading, working back then. But yeah, it's a good way, as you say, to always try to improve on these features in the product. But really like looking forward to where it's gonna go, to how far it's gonna go. But I'm super
mm,
bullish because there is a market for this, and your, I would say, added value and biggest proposition value is very strong, the self-service. Because I feel like more and
mm,
more people want to build their own things and have at least the ownership of their own dashboards. I worked a lot with the marketing, the product, or the sales teams. Having to rely on someone like me, especially I was the only one, in the analytics. Having to rely on one person to build everything is not scalable
who
and
text
not ideal.
who text over yourself?
I think someone started actually yesterday.
Okay.
I think for 2 months they had to do without an analytics, but I mean there was a data engineer obviously and a data scientist who were helping
Mm,
when I left. But I think they only got a replacement yesterday. It's hard to find.
okay,
And in
okay.
France you have also the 3 months notice period. So even if you find someone, it's very hard to bring him
3 months.
or her in. Yeah, here
Oh
it's
wow.
3 months notice period. It's not like Singapore. Singapore maybe it's 1 month
No.
notice period. Everyone leaves the job very quickly, right? Here it's live in and need to focus. So yeah, let's keep
Awesome.
this conversation open. Send me anyone
Okay.
you need help with, and I would be more than happy to assist you on this one.
Okay. Awesome. All right. Thanks. Thank
Sounds
you, my dear.
sounds perfect. Thanks so much for
Mm,
taking this call. We're really looking forward
no
to
worries.
seeing what happens next then.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay.
See you.
Yeah. Take care. Keep
Cheers.
me updated. Bye.